Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm so happy that we are meeting again. This is our second time podcasting on each other's platforms. And I'm so excited to have you and to have this conversation because the last time we did this was around this time last year, and our lives have drastically transformed. We're in a new house.
Yeah. Completely different. Nothing's
Yeah.
the same.
So we're going to talk a lot about that, quantum leaping and shifting, but the real conversation that we want to sit down and talk about today is radical responsibility and why the time is now to take radical responsibility in your life. So let's dive in.
Yeah, I believe that we don't really have a choice, because of what's going on in the world. And like we said, behind the scenes, there are people that will be a victim and have the current environment be the reason why they're not rising or the reason why they're feeling a certain way or getting a certain results in their life, or the circumstances can be what they are.
Yeah.
And we can choose not to be impacted, meaning anything that is the reason why we are a certain way, and that's success too. If we're successful because of something outside of us, or we are not successful because of something outside of us, that still makes us a victim to those circumstances.
Yeah, lately I've been feeling like success just is, money just is, like feeling such a knowing and such an untethering from any conditions. And it has created such freedom for me and joy and happiness. And at the same time, like when we speak to radical responsibility, not only is it going to change the results in your life, but it's going to change how you feel in your life, how you feel in your body, because you really don't give a fuck. So people are going around going, the tariffs, the politics, the economy, the mortgage rates, all this, and I can respect that that's relevant, and that's a relevant conversation. We're both homeowners. We are aware in the world. But when I hear those things, it doesn't waver me, not even for a moment. I'm just like, interesting, cool. I don't know. I'm not watching the news. I'm getting updates from my fiance. I'm not involved in plugging into that. I'm not plugging into disempowerment. I'm plugging into every single day my own standard of alignment, my own highest, most unfuckwithable, like my book, energy. And then it doesn't matter what's going on outside. No circumstances, no conditions will waver how I move through each day.
Yeah, agreed. And I also think that the part of the circumstance that is happening in the outside world, the part in which you experience as Haley Bowler-Cooke is unique to you based on your perception of the situation. So what I mean by that is the mortgage rates. Let's just take that. The mortgage rates are what they are. And let's say you are about to buy a new home. Is it possible that you will get presented with a different mortgage rate that is slightly different than the masses? Absolutely. I've seen that happen with clients. So what is it that's creating your experience that's different than the masses? Well, it's you taking radical responsibility and not getting caught up and not being a victim to it and believing that that's the only way.
And if you operate from a stance of personal empowerment, a stance of being unfuckwithable, a stance of I'm taking radical responsibility in my life, nothing outside shifts anything. And then all of a sudden, you're not placing meaning on anything. This is good or this is bad. You're just like, this just is. This just is. And when you have such a cultivated, empowered relationship with you as the source of the power in your life, you as the source of the abundance in your life, you as the source of the health in your life, the wellness in your life, when you have that, I am the source, it really doesn't matter. And everything outside just becomes this noise that eventually you just stop hearing because you're so dialed in to your present reality and your present moment. And that's when life really opens up for you, because people are distracted over here and you're choosing to hone in on what's actually real and true. And one thing I will sometimes say, if Mitch is like, And I do love that he like maintains, you know, an eye on the news. But if he says something like that, I'll look and say, what does that mean for us? And then, oh, well, nothing really. Okay, so I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's that clear. I have far and few people in my life who place any power outside of themselves. I have a few friends that I love, that I hold in my life, that still place power outside of themselves. But in terms of colleagues, in terms of most of my friends, clients, my profession, every single day I'm talking to high performers who are high level, who are not moving like the masses.
Yeah.
And one of the many things you and I connected on is years ago when we met, coming out of a difficult season for humanity, we came out like fucking warriors. We came out stronger and clearer. And we learned at that point that we can't place power outside of ourselves. And if we do, we're a victim.
Yeah.
And I'm not available to be a victim in my life. Now there's people with what's going on globally and politically right now who are feeling a script has flipped and now they feel disempowered by something going on outside of them. And if you're listening to this or watching this and you resonate with that, this is like a loving kick in the butt, but you are the source. You are the source of your own happiness, your own success, your own abundance, your own life, and how you move through life. And you can play the blame game and you can be in victimhood. And I'm not saying there aren't very real reasons for you to experience disempowerment. There are. But how long do you want to stay in that?
Totally.
Like, how long do you want to live in that and dwell in that when you can just instantaneously choose, this is a moment for me to rise. This is a moment for me to reclaim power. This is a moment for me to take my life back right now and come out so much stronger.
And when we say that, and when you say that, I was thinking there is room for our human emotions, for like grief.
Yes.
If something's happened, and take that time to feel your emotions, right? We're not saying like don't just bulldoze through the events that happen, but have a perception that the events are happening for us and that you are the creator of everything that you're experiencing. So your highest self has put this into your reality for a reason, for growth, for expansion, and that there's nothing wrong here.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that idea of that there's nothing good or bad, because I think I can just hear people in my audience going, well, what do you mean? Like, what about this, this, and this? These things are bad. So how are you saying, like, how can you sit with just being, it is what it is? It's a powerful conversation, and it really does take a certain level of awareness to be able to sit in it, like actually sit in it, that life, that this is happening for me. Because I think we can say it, but not really feel it.
Yeah, I riffed recently on on Instagram Live on my way to your chalet on Saturday. And what's happening right now as we're collectively rising is we're gonna really notice if you are someone who's been knowing the things, like this is happening for me, I know it, or I feel it, or I believe it, or I think it, versus the people who are living that way. And the actual embodied, integrated state of consciousness of, oh, thank you, when something really hard happens, to be like, thank you, and then to move in that alignment, to move from that space. We're gonna see, as we always see throughout history, when humans are given an opportunity to rise, we see it time and time again. We're seeing that in 2025. There is a rise occurring where it's going to become very obvious. And I don't like saying, like, if people are like this or people like this, like, let's talk to you as an individual. It's going to be very obvious to you if you are someone who is living, breathing, and embodied and integrated the experience of consciousness of, this is happening for me, thank you. And you can feel that. I can feel it in my physiology when I say that and feel that.
Yeah.
Or if you're someone who has, up until this point, this is your moment to change and expand. If you're someone who's just like, I like thinking that, I like believing that, I've read that in books before, I'm aware of it, I understand it. Understanding isn't enough anymore. It really never was. It keeps you in a level of mediocrity that you're so much better than, and you deserve so much better than. But the time and any time throughout history where there's things in our lives or in our own personal history, our own personal story, where we're called to rise, the only thing that will take you through to that next level is to actually live and breathe that truth, as opposed to knowing it. Knowing it's all the books on the shelf, they mean nothing if you're not living it right now.
Applied knowledge.
Yeah.
And for me, that looks like leaning in to the opportunity.
Yes.
So rather than like any sort of avoidance
that
it's happening, or blame or victim, like we talked about, but really leaning in and saying, okay, it is what it is, and I created this.
Yeah.
This is my manifestation.
Yeah.
And in the moment, with the first glance, I may not like it. It may not be what I prefer.
Yeah.
And when we create our reality, that's important to understand as well, is that you're not always going to create sunshine and rainbows. And that's okay. I think there's a belief out there that, well, if we're creators, that everything is ease and flow, but it can be ease and flow, but that's based on your perception. It's not always.
I think something that kind of like ripples out of that too is if we're having the conversation about not judging it as good or bad, and we're having the conversation about leaning in when it is hard, and we're having the conversation about taking radical responsibility in our lives, it's so much easier to do from a foundation of I'm the main character in my life. Because if you imagine any great novel or book or movie or series, or even just someone you look up to, like I'm not really a big like book reader. I wrote my own book, but I'm not a big book reader. But I can appreciate a good fucking movie. And I can appreciate also like listening to the interviews of people who have achieved greatness here on earth in their human life, in their timeline. And I can hear their stories, and it's not everything was so easy and amazing all the time. It's not that. It's you may look at them and feel joy and abundance and success and happiness, but they have been through emotions that felt quite contrary to that. And they've been through experiences that a normal person would label as bad or hard or wrong or challenging, that most people would have given up. And most people would have lowered their standard or lowered their vibration. But the people who you're listening to on these interviews, the people who are being written about in the books and you're watching on TV and on the movies, they have decided that they're the main character in their life and their story. And they're grateful for the rich stories and experiences without judging them as good or bad. They can still know what they prefer and lean into that and align to that and trust that the journey, the dips and the valleys and the challenges and the really hard edges, they just decide to surf the edge or surf the wave. They decide to lean in. They decide to embrace it. And for you right now, witnessing, listening, experiencing our conversation, where in your life have you backed off when you could have leaned in? Where in your life are you being a side character because it's safer and more comfortable, versus if I lean into this edge? In my book, I talk about the edge of evolution. If I lean into this edge, what's on the other side?
Yeah. Like,
how fun and expansive could your life be if you took that main character role?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I've done, I just recently did a reel or something about right before your biggest breakthrough is the hardest moment.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenges or losses, right? And it's like, what do we do when you're experiencing that loss? And this makes the difference. It really does show who is expanding to that next level and who will stay at the same place.
Yeah.
To your point about leaning in. So if you can see a challenging moment, or any time that you have outside circumstances that are difficult, what if you saw it as, in this situation, there's a lesson, there's a learning that I actually, or a skill that I actually need for that quantum leap, for that next level. And by leaning in through experience, not by reading a book, but through experience, I'm actually developing the skill.
Yeah.
And experiential learning, and I can take that.
Yeah.
And not everyone does, but ideally you're aware enough that you can identify what that lesson, what that learning is, take it into that next level, and then embody that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're not willing to lean into the edge at the level that you were at, but you're listening to our podcast, whether you're listening to Danielle's or my podcast right now, or watching on one of our YouTube channels, you're here because you've said yes to more in your life. You're here because you are welcoming your highest timeline. You're welcoming your dreams, your goals, your desires, and they're going to be very unique and specific to you. You're welcoming that in. You're like, I'm declaring this to the world that I'm ready for this. Now, if you're not willing to lean in at this level you're at now, but you say you want this next level, you're never going to experience this next level because you're too scared to take the leap or to make the move or to lean in a little bit further. And there are, like, I would be lying through my teeth if I said that at every next level there's not a new edge, or there's not a new challenge, or there's not a new vulnerable part of yourself that you get to look right at into the eyes and go, oh, hello, like, this vulnerable part of myself that I was protecting because of what? I was scared of feeling something. I was scared of feeling the fear. I was scared of feeling the embarrassment. I was scared of feeling the judgment, the shame, the doubt, the failure. Whatever you think you're scared of is why you're staying here, because you're not willing to experience it. Now, over the last year specifically, I have felt feelings and emotions and vulnerabilities that I didn't even know I had inside of me because I went to new edges. And that was hard and was challenging. But when I choose the perspective and I make the choice to look at it through the perspective of no judgment of any emotion, I'm not labeling happiness better than sadness. If I actually choose to live that way, and then I reflect on the year that I've had, I literally could cry tears of joy and happiness of the range that I experienced that I never experienced before because I was operating in a more limited paradigm. So if you want to step into that next paradigm, you're expanding. You're taking up more space. You're feeling more edges of yourself, more details of yourself, emotions that you've never seen before, conversations, hard conversations, vulnerable conversations that you haven't leaned into. And so often we as humans, we're so scared and terrified of that unknown experience that we will just repeat the patterns. And often, and I know you speak to this a lot, but behavior change and a paradigm shift, it comes down to usually one or two things. Either I so badly want what's next, or I can't fucking stay here anymore, right?
Yeah.
So why are you perpetuating your suffering? Because you're scared of a moment of unknown. And here's the thing, and I'd love to hear you riff on this. I'm thinking of some of the challenging things I went through in the last year that really preceded a growth or an evolution or a huge success in my life. I'm thinking about it. None of it was suffering.
I was just gonna say.
It doesn't feel like suffering.
Yeah.
It feels scary. It feels sad. It feels vulnerable, and you do feel raw and exposed, but it doesn't feel like suffering. It feels like being alive.
I was just gonna say, and isn't this an interesting way to perceive it? Because I think if you go out on the street and you ask random people, what do you want the next year to look like? And people will tell you that they want like ease and joy and all of that. But they're thinking in their mind that they actually want things to stay the same and be like a picnic of life. But when you look back, like when you described this last year, and all the things that you experienced, you feel fulfilled because you've grown. It feels exciting and activating because you've grown.
Yeah.
An analogy that I think we're both aware of is the video game. So, you know, when video games back in, well, you might not remember, but in the 90s, you could get like these cheat codes for video games. And you could get a cheat code which would allow you, like you'd be playing Mario Brothers, and there'd be a code that you can input into the game, and it would just allow you to fly through the game, no problems, just no hurdles, just like getting all the gold coins and all the things, and you could get to the top within an hour. And what happens is people would go through the whole thing, all the levels within an hour, and get bored, and they'd put the game away.
Yeah.
That's not where our joy is having everything be so easy peasy. Our joy is actually in overcoming the hurdles, going through the obstacles, learning and growing, and that's a fulfilled life. And that's why when you describe this past year, when you look back, like this has been one of the most exciting years of your life, yet you've had so many obstacles and hurdles to work through, and not all of them public, you know, they're behind the scenes, but that's because your perception, your ability to perceive what's in front of you is not a problem. It's not bad. It's actually an opportunity. And I think that this is a really important message for people to hear, is like, please don't shy away from what's coming to you. It's coming for you. And think of yourself going through the Mario Brothers game. You feel so good when you've overcome the dragon. I don't know.
And to speak to like ease and peace and bliss, because I think that those are certainly states that fulfill me. But I don't think I've ever felt, if you're not feeling the contrast, you're not feeling the peace to its fullest. So when I'm thinking and reflecting, an affirmation I've been saying a lot lately has been, I've done enough and I trust. I've done enough and I trust. And to me, it's not just I'm saying words that feel good. Like, it feels true for me. And I'm willingly leaning into really big growth edges every single day, choosing this. And then there's another moment in the day where I'm like, I've done enough. And the feeling of bliss and fulfillment and ease and peacefulness that I experience is way higher than what my past self, who wasn't leaning into the edges, ever could have experienced. So living a truly full, alive life, it's not just about pedestaling certain feelings and emotions and wanting to only feel those. It's about like leaning into the unknown and experience. It's like literally just like, it's like getting like a tattoo or like a piercing or something. It's like, oh, ow. And then it's like, oh, yay, but I have this thing that I love, right? It's literally like that. It's like, it's so momentary. It's so momentary. And I was just recently interviewed on another podcast about my near-death experience. And when I was talking about the momentary experience of fear right before I experienced unconsciousness and died, that feeling, it was very scary, I will not lie, but it lasted. Like, time wasn't real at the time, but like if I were to do my best to say how long did it last, a millisecond. Like, it was just like, oh, this is the worst feeling I've ever felt for a millisecond. And then it was like the most beautiful euphoric bliss I've ever felt for like what felt like years.
Law of opposites right before.
Totally. And the man that was interviewing me on this podcast, he only interviews people who've had near-death experiences. And he had just interviewed a man who was attacked by 2 sharks at the same time. And he said, he was telling me and confirming and validating me of how similar my story is to a lot of the people he's interviewed, of like, there is this very scary moment because you do, like, you have a full ego death. You have a full, like, I have no control anymore. Similar to what it feels like when you fucking lean into edges. Like, you don't need a near-death experience to feel the feelings of like an ego death or I'm fully surrendered. And I trust. Like, but you're never gonna get those feelings if you stay put and if you stay in a limited paradigm. But he was describing the man who was attacked by the sharks, had this like extreme pain because he was literally losing limbs. But that pain, for some reason, it was like so quick. It was just like, oh my gosh, pain, this is happening. But it was his mind perceiving the pain. It wasn't actually the pain in the moment. It was like a foreshadow of this is going to be really scary and painful. And then when he was actually, the shock response, and our human bodies are incredible for that, the shock response kicked in. He felt no pain. He felt bliss.
Wow.
And he actually he found God in that moment, according to the man who interviewed him, is what he said, because he like locked eyes with the shark and was like, and he found God in that moment, and he survived. The sharks, like they locked eyes and then the sharks swam away and like left him. But it was like, if you're listening to this and being like, okay, I don't want to like go through that, you don't need to go through that. It's just it's a sliver of an experience of like the range and the emotional swells, and when you let yourself actually be alive, like leaning in there. I would be lying, like I said, through my teeth if I was to say that there's not moments of really hard and scary moments as you live the life you know you're fucking meant to live. But that's why you're here. Like that's who you are.
And we don't have to like call in a death or that kind of experience. So then let's talk about how someone can really lean in through radical responsibility then. So, it really is when you are in a moment, like we were just talking personally about how we're both experiencing these moments. It's an invitation to lean in, and we can
do
feel
what's
ourselves uncomfortable. Yeah. And it be okay. Like we're actually, we said to each other, okay, well then that's the move, because it means we're more uncomfortable, and it's actually choosing that and
choosing what's more uncomfortable when you know it's your highest.
That's right.
Yeah. Because there's some people that will choose what's more uncomfortable because they think that that's what they should do. I should show up this way. I should.
That's interesting.
Do you know what I mean? Like, especially I think, I know we have a variety of listeners and viewers, but I know that I'm thinking of your audience being a lot of coaches. There are these formulas and paths and maps that, and even in business, even just in business ownership, that somebody who's maybe done really well for themselves would maybe say, here's the formula you must follow. And then it doesn't feel good to us. It doesn't feel right. So it feels uncomfortable. But we don't also have the feeling of, but it's so right. Because I know for me, when I've done the uncomfortable thing, which is literally every day, many times a day, that I know is so right, it has that feeling of like expansion, not this feeling of like, oh, like I'm powerless. I have to do this and I don't want to. We're business owners because we don't want to fucking do what we don't want to do, right? Like we have to celebrate the fact that like we are creating lives where we do whatever the fuck we want. That's why we're here. And if we want to do whatever the fuck we want on that next level, be it financially, be it freedom, be it time, be it experience and adventure, whatever it is for you, you're going to feel not only uncomfortable, but you're going to also feel the excitement, and you're going to also feel like the possibility there.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. What do you think about the willingness, like even, because I think a lot of people don't know what they don't want to do just for the sake of don't want to do it. So the conversation that I often have with clients is like, oftentimes you just have to show the universe that you're willing to do what it takes, like what you perceive, because whatever that person believes they have to do to get the goal will be what they have to do. And so it's like, because that's how powerful our belief is, right? And so it's like, show up and be willing to get uncomfortable in a certain area, and that's often enough to break through the mold to the next level. You don't have to keep doing things that certain way, way. Do you know what I mean? So like pushing through that resistance. So if you got resistance, I'm thinking like, I don't know, as someone that has to cold call businesses to be on podcasts, and they're like, this is not something I want to do. I'm not comfortable. And I'm like, just be willing to make that first call and introduce yourself. And that like is enough to get the momentum moving and lean into that edge, learn what there is to learn for you to put yourself out there, for example. and then notice what happens next. And it might not be your strategy that you do for the next year that you're cold calling businesses. Your willingness to move through and learn that. Does that make sense?
100%. And to get a little quantum here as well, which is what I more specialize in on the energy side of things, is there's a lot we can do in the energy realm that shifts the physical realm. Pretty much everything. That's the conversations we're having. Like, this is all identity. This is all energetics that shifts the physical. But sometimes, and I've coached people on this, I've done this in my own practice. You and I have talked about this many times, but imagine there's something that needs to be done. And I'm going to use a client example. I won't say any names, but there is a client who there was a person in their life, and it was a very toxic relationship, but the client needed to reclaim power in that relationship and set a boundary and a standard in that relationship, but didn't want to physically see this person or actually like call them or talk to them in that way, which I celebrated and I also advised. But I said, oh, no problem. But let's first make sure that you're not scared to do that. Let's first make sure that this is a choice coming from love and high standards and truth, not from fear. And once we know that it's a choice from love, high standards, and not from fear, and no, you can't fake it till you make it, and no, you can't mind fuck it, it has to be true. If it's truly because you know it's the highest standard for your life, then we can do it in the energy realm, no problem. So we did that. We proceeded to do that. We had the conversation like they were on the phone with that person. What would you say? What would you do? What boundary and standard would you put in place? Okay, let's feel it fully in your body. We did a full energy upgrade. It was painful. It was challenging. It was amazing. It felt so real because I'm getting them into a theta hypnotic state where it feels so real. And we did that. And sure enough, the physical reality changed. There was no need to ever place a boundary with this person. They vanished from their life. And that was beautiful and a good thing. Now, this is the most important thing. You were just saying your willingness to do it, right? And it is in similar language. It's, are you doing it from love and expansion and opportunity and truth, or are you not doing it from fear, right? And I think it's such a nuanced conversation because there's many things in my life that I don't want to do from stubbornness and laziness. And then there's many things that I don't want to do in my life because I know they're simply not aligned. And then there's many things that I don't want to do because I'm scared to do it. And I'm constantly nonstop checking with myself. Okay, you don't want to do it because you're scared, do it. Oh, you don't want to do it because you're lazy, figure it the fuck out. Oh, you don't want to do it because it's not aligned, perfect, don't do it.
This is your ability to be honest with yourself.
Oh, and it's a moment
to be objective.
Yes.
And to really ask yourself the hard questions and to have that level of, again, responsibility.
100%. It is, we said this before we started recording while we were making our chai tea lattes. It is a moment to moment 24/7, no days off choice to be alive in your life, to live your highest timeline. Now, someone listening might be like, oh, I don't want to do that. Then enjoy this mediocre reality. Like, that's the truth.
Yeah, it is.
You will stay in a mediocre reality where you're not fulfilled and you're not happy and you're not achieving the success you deserve, that you're meant for, that God placed you on this earth for, that life chose you for, if you're not willing to be in this state. Now, the amazing thing about being in a nonstop 24/7 state of I am consciousness, I am alive, is it feels so good. It doesn't mean you're not on. It doesn't mean it's not a choice, but you are you're in states of bliss and euphoria way more often. You're in states of fulfillment and purpose way more often. You're also in states of like, interesting, this just got popped into my reality. Okay, what now?
That's my favorite word, by the way, interesting. Like, interesting. My daughter uses it all the time when there's like something that we don't prefer. It's like, okay, interesting.
It's the best way to
describe it.
It's the best way to describe it without judging it.
Totally. Or if someone makes a comment, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And I can hear, or I'll overhear Eloise do it. I'm like, I know that tool.
Oh my gosh.
It's powerful.
It's so powerful. I just had a flash of my fiance's sister. If I've noticed, if she doesn't like agree with something that's being said, but she's like, kind and trained to be kind, she goes, and it's just like, I just have noticed her do it over the 12 years, and like I've started doing it and I love it. Like, and here's a cute example. On my way home from the chalet, I ran into somebody at the grocery store who I know, who's an angel and high vibe and just an amazing person. But they also work in an industry where I think they have to talk to a lot of normal people every day, and they're probably not used to talking to someone like me every day, where I really don't entertain doubt, I don't entertain lack, I don't entertain, what's the opposite of positivity? I don't even know that word. Negativity. I don't entertain negativity. Yeah. I don't entertain like bleh vibes. Yeah. So she said something like, oh, like about the weather, right? Which she probably just had been repeatedly saying all day to everyone who came into the store. And I was just like, well, I literally said, sometimes I would go, but I decided to go a little further, and I was like, I'm not a victim of my circumstances. So in the winter, I hike, I spa, I drink hot, cozy drinks. Like, I fucking love it. Like, I saw, because she is such a high level person, she was so enlightened and like, thank you, yes. Versus like, right? Which I wouldn't give a fuck either way. If she was just like, okay, toxic positivity or whatever, I wouldn't care. But like, I have no time. It could be the smallest thing. And this is the level of 24/7 alignment. Like, it could just be like literally someone at like the LCBO make a negative comment as I'm checking out about the weather or politics or something like that normal people talk about. And I just be like, I don't see it that way. Or like, I make sure that if it's in my reality, I'm holding a frequency and a standard I'm not participating in a lower frequency. I'm not participating. I'm not reacting with that. And it doesn't happen a lot because I really do attract like-minded people and high vibrations. But when it does happen, I really take it seriously.
Yeah, well, it's an indication as to what's going on there. You wouldn't have attracted it. So it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's part of radical responsibility.
It is like, radical responsibility and not being a victim.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I pop that into my reality. There's like something for me to notice and not judge myself.
And so many people, I think, listening can resonate with what it feels like to hold yourself to a very high standard in certain rooms and speak in alignment and be in alignment in certain rooms. But then you fall into old patterning with certain people.
Especially at home, family, high school friends, like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And even like really long-term relationships where you've been evolving all the time, but they're just playing a role in your life, right? Because you're the main character. They're playing a role. It doesn't mean they're not individually sovereign and empowered and beautiful in their own right. They're their own main character. But I'm speaking to you listening who's got this plugged into your ears. You're the main character, so no matter how important they are in your life, your children, your husband, your wife, whoever, they're playing a role and they're inviting you into your own expansion in every moment, even if they're reminding you of who you used to be, right? Or reminding you of an old, outdated, expired paradigm. You, on some level of consciousness, invited that in, asked for that to rise. Now, we all know that feeling when you say or do something that feels so expired and you're like, ugh, why did I fucking do that? That feeling on a certain level of alignment, like the level that we're on and the level that you deserve to be on, I don't even know that feeling. I don't know what it feels like to say or do something that I regret or that I didn't stand behind because it's been so fucking long. And that to me is a life well lived, is like, I show up in every room, in every environment. I treat somebody who's working at the grocery store with the same level of respect and integrity that I would treat someone who I look highly up to. Like, I trust what I say. I'm not afraid of, we were just talking about this on the weekend. I'm not afraid of conflict like I used to be. I'm not afraid of holding a standard and really speaking truth, even if it's not what the person who I really look up to thinks or feels. I'm not scared like I used to be. And I think it's because I've just practiced speaking my truth, being embodied in my alignment even in the face of people that don't fully agree, and for there to still be such mutual respect and honoring there, and kind of learning like, oh, I can just be like, this is actually what feels true for me, and them to be like, well, this is what feels true for me, and then us both to be like, I love that. Yay,
we come
together. That feeling, like, it's something I'm really good at, but it's also something I'm naturally born with, but it's also something I've certainly cultivated, and I think that that's something that we can practice doing. It's like a moment of uncomfortableness, like I said about the near-death experience. It's a moment of like, I could do what I used to do with my old high school friends, or I could actually be like, this is actually what feels better for me. And let it be okay if they celebrate or support it, and let it be okay if they judge you and shame you for it.
That's
like,
a huge part of surrender, isn't it? Like
100%.
you let go of the outcome.
Yeah.
And be okay with what happens.
Yes. Okay, how are we feeling? I feel like we have
I know.
There's so much that we just covered on radical responsibility. And we were talking about titling this Radical Responsibility and Radical Results. And I do like speaking to results. I'm not someone who's afraid to speak to results, because I know that I care about results in my human experience. And for me, results are tangible, but they're also intangible. And and I hope you've gathered this from our conversation, but I'll summarize it here. If you desire your next level, the new paradigm, what you know is meant for you, your destiny, your desires that are so true in your soul, if you desire that, they are genuinely on the other side of you taking radical responsibility of your life. And taking radical responsibility, yes, it does mean that you're equally surrendered as you are empowered. Like, that's what it's like. It's like it's almost like it's like a full circle. It's like when you're so feminine, you can be so masculine. It's like that. It's like, I know what it feels like to be so feminine that I can be so masculine and still feel like I've not lost myself and still feel like I know who I am. It's the same thing with this. Radical responsibility, it's like, I've done enough, and so I trust. I know who the fuck I am, and so I let life do its thing. Like, it's so easy to be harmonized in that when you live in radical responsibility. And the next radical result is literally on the other side of you choosing to lean into what's uncomfortable, because you know that uncomfortableness is what you're meant to do.
Yeah, and it's causing that growth, and the whole purpose of that desire is for you to grow and evolve.
Yeah. And say no because of a standard. Don't say no because of fear. That's been a huge one for me lately. And another echoing of, like, you said it very well, of like, you can just initiate that next level by being willing to lean in.
Yeah, and it's not, and when I said that and I got present on your reflection, it's like being willing to take the action, yes, but being willing to be and shift on the inside, shift your perceptions. The being willingness part is operating on all levels in which we exist, right? It's not just the physical, but it's the willingness to grow.
Even like what we were behind the scenes talking about, they were very much, it was actually the uncomfortable thing was us to not do.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable thing we were both having very unique experiences that we were riffing on behind the scenes before we hit record. But the edge for us that we knew we needed to lean into was to not do.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I think that a lot of high performers listening, high level business owners listening can resonate. Certainly a lot of mothers and wives and women can resonate. So for me, it was like, as we're recording this is coming out after my vacation, but in a couple of days I'm heading out on vacation, and it's almost 10 days and we're yachting, and it's very luxurious and it's very beautiful and first class and all these amazing things that normally when I do a trip like this, I also work on these trips, because I'm like, I'm investing all this, I'm gonna work as well. And it's like sort of an expired reality. I was saying to a woman at hip hop last night, I was like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, because it's gonna be the first trip in a long time that's this long that I'm not working on. I've done certainly long weekends where I don't work, where I'm going on little getaways, but this is like a chunk of time that I'm choosing consciously to take off work. And it's extremely edgy for me to not be on my phone, to not be in my emails, to not be in my DMs, to not be actively, consciously doing anything in my business, in my career. To me, that's a huge edge. It's a huge edge to fully take that space and that time. And that's how I know that that's what I'm ready for. And I was saying to the woman last night at Hip Hop, I said, there was a time in my career where it was so expansive to be able to work on vacation. Like to be able to go, like I remember going to Tulum and working and feeling like I am so free. I'm in Tulum and I'm making money. And that felt so fucking good. I remember recently, a couple years ago, being in Arizona and being in our Airbnb and taking like calls from the pool and like taking client calls, like literally client calls, like sessions, and feeling so empowered by that.
That idea of like work from anywhere.
Yes.
And that you
and that was, it's like, I created this, I'm so expanded. Where for me, this next edge and what actually feels true and right at this moment in time is to not work and to fully take space. And it feels so edgy for me. And it brings up a lot of old patterns of busy, busy, busy for the sake of your badge of honor of I'm so busy, or productivity, or proving energy of look how hardworking I am to validate my success or to validate the lifestyle that I live or the freedom that I have. Like, well, I've earned it. Well, I've earned it. It's like this new edge is like, I've earned it and I don't need to earn it anyways. Like I can just take this 10 days at sea and relax.
And your business can increase.
Yes. And that is a whole other conversation
like
of amazing
edge,
automated
right?
stuff. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
And even without automation, it can just like, that's a belief that on vacation, you make the most money.
Without me working, without
you doing anything.
Consciously,
doing anything, just being.
Yeah. So it feels good. Like it's a small example of one of the many edges I'm going to lean into today and make the choice today and align to that. And
let go of control, which is where we aligned with both of our examples. Me not controlling a situation or another person's way that they respond and letting it go. Yeah. And that's surrender.
And it's freeing. And there's moments of uncomfortableness.
And then not judging the outcome. So going back, that whatever our highest self brings into our human experience is the experience right now for us. Yeah. And that is beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. So is there anything we want to close out on, or how do we feel?
Yeah, it's great. I think, this is your invitation to everyone listening, your invitation to lean in, like we said, to look for opportunities that you can take radical responsibility in your life, in your business, your personal life, and to really embody this idea that life's happening for you, that your circumstances are a true gift, and to move through them with such a high level of awareness and consciousness that you're experiencing it as that gift without needing to change it to be okay. You're really just in it.
Yeah, so good. I'm so grateful for this conversation. Yes, and I'm so grateful for you in my life as a friend, as a colleague, as someone I admire and learn from, and someone that I love to also guide and support. I'm so grateful for you and for us. And thank you. And thank you.
I love us. So I echo everything back, and you become one of the most important people in my life over this past year.
You too.
And I'm honored to have you in my life.
Thank
you. For all of you listening, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm Haley Bowler-Cooke.
Danielle Amos.
And we hope to see you soon.